It's time we all talked about a serious problem in Monster Hunter World. And that problem? A lack of Plesioth? There are so many monsters for so little time, so little space in this game, it's honestly a big crime. Looking at all these environments and all these cool places, we have a serious lack of seriously cool faces. These new monsters are fantastic, their movesets are nice, but I wouldn't mind a few monsters returning in the Iceborne expansion, especially ones I really hate, ones with an ugly face and a stupid hitbox and hips that carry weight. If you consider yourself a masochist and enjoy your time with this massive fish, but you don't like pain or sleep or beans, then this massive fish will be the end of it. So without further ado, and with plenty of time to savor it, let's talk about a monster who's surely a fan favorite. Sorry, it's really hard to look at this face and say anything even remotely serious. However, something that should be taken a bit seriously is the possibility of Plesioth showing up in the new world. So with the release of Iceborne coming closer and closer every day, let's look at why Plesioth would and should come to the new world, and how he would translate into the brand new realm of game mechanics. Starting off then with why on earth anyone would ever want or expect to see Plesioth make the long and arduous journey to the new world. The first reason is that he's a fish. He can swim pretty effortlessly, so getting here probably wouldn't be very hard. Then again, Tigrex made it to the new world, and he definitely can't swim, and I haven't seen one fly in the last few million years after some evolutionary changes, so I guess that reason only really serves to make me feel a little bit better if he does show up. Though the main thing I think would make me feel better if he did show up is just how well Monster Hunter World has done with returning monsters so far. To a lesser extent with the just strong translations of monsters like Nargacuga and Tigrex, who are more recent, or even Deviljho back in the day, who are more or less the same but feel like the same fight, but even better. And then look at someone like Lunastra, actually. Her fight was completely redesigned from the old world to the new world, and she is actually one of my favorite fights in the game. Whichever route they would choose for Plesioth, if he were to come, I am confident that he will be at least a reasonably enjoyable fight, because they have already shown that they are fully willing and capable of redesigning the combat of a monster if that's not the case. What I'm saying is Plesioth can be fixed.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology.
And the amount of absolute salt from the community about Plesioth is the main reason that I do want him to be fixed. I know, I just used the words I and want and Plesioth in the same sentence. With what we know about Iceborne so far, Beatoda specifically, we have 3 Piscine Wyverns in the new world. Now, that is a pretty small number until you remember that there are only 4 Piscine Wyverns in general. Cotton, there's 5. I don't count Cephadrome. Actually, you know what? Yeah, there are 4. Wink, wink. Why did you say wink out loud? As far as large monsters go, there are 6 Piscine Wyverns in the main series, one of which is Plesioth, another of which is Green Plesioth. One is Cephadrome, and the rest are Gerardus, Levisioth, and Beatotus, who all belong in the new world. In fact, the 5th generation of Monster Hunter has introduced as many new Piscine Wyverns already as the 1st generation, if you don't count the monster that is essentially just Plesioth but green. And what is even more interesting than that is our New World generation of Monster Hunter is the first one to even create a single new Piscine Wyvern since the 1st generation, as Levisioth, who joined in the 2nd gen, was brought over from Frontier rather than starting in the main series itself. Maybe it's a coincidence, or maybe Capcom is trying to make Piscine Wyverns their new main attraction. But in all seriousness, for this many fish to be here without the father of the fin, the granddaddy of them all, it seems a little odd, doesn't it? Sort of like having a game absolutely stuffed to the brim with flying wyverns without having a single wrath in sight. Or like having a game stuffed with fire monsters with no water weapons, or even really water monsters, honestly. This is actually one of the strangest things in Monster Hunter World. The fact that even through DLC drops and updates, we are now up to 35 large monsters. One of these monsters' weapons has the water element on it, and literally 0 of them actually use water as a proper weapon, with the closest we get in this game being mud, which is literally water combined with a bunch of dirt, so it's just less pure water. So sure, it gives you the water debuff, but I'll be damned if I let anyone try and tell me that Gerardus or Baroth are water monsters. Now, for anyone else who would try to tell you that Plesioth should never come to World, I offer you one final reason: his ecology. I am a firm believer that the strongest factor in a monster's translation to World is the quality of their original concept. Fights can be changed, behaviors will almost guaranteed be a little bit different, but what World's engine lets the developers do is truly bring out the personality in a monster that has been there since the beginning. Truly make it the monster that they see it as, and how they've always seen it. You see, when you look into Plesioth's details, all the way down to the soul of the monster, he's just sort of misunderstood.
No, 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 no.
They are fish that can't actually breathe underwater. They are large, but not particularly strong, either physically or through abilities. Plesioth's bite, which causes sleep, is an absolute defensive mechanism. He literally tries to put things to sleep so he can escape. And his water beam is actually, well, it's essentially him regurgitating water that he swallowed while swimming. Now, remove your pre-existing thoughts about Plesioth and attribute that personality like, oh, I don't know, something likable, like a Dodogama. Imagine a Dodogama subspecies who is skinny but large, bites people to sleep, and regurgitates water instead of rocks. Now, maybe it's just the likability of Dodogama in particular, but what I'm saying is as a personality by itself, Plesioth is actually really sort of awkward and nerdy and I guess almost cute, at least in my opinion.
I don't remember asking you a goddamn thing.
Now, if you want to talk about how to make the fight more enjoyable in World and bring it up to speed with the New World mechanics, the answer is 2 words. Good hitbox. If you were to describe Plesioth as a real-world weapon, he would be a fucking great hammer. No precision, no grace, but he will hit hard, and he will hit everywhere. In recent years and recent iterations, Plesioth has been slowly becoming more reasonable in that department, but even as recently as Generations Ultimate, there are definitely some questionable hits. Personally, I think this is because he has attributed the same skeleton to something like Plesioth, which is thicker, and then they just make him look a little thinner than that. Which actually brings me to an interesting note here, which is that all New World Piscine Wyverns actually share that exact slightly non-Plesioth shape that Plesioth has. Now, Plesioth definitely needs a graphical update if he wants to come to World. I mean, he looks like shit, honestly. But the real question is, to what extent will that be? Will he be totally redone and made to look closer to the modern Piscine Wyverns with their chunkier bodies and rounder faces, or would he just be an enhanced version of his former self? Personally, I lobby for the second one, as his differences are part of what make him even remotely unique anymore. I mean, when he was introduced, there was so little like him, he was literally known as the Water Wyvern. Incidentally, if he were included in World, people would probably still call him that, as he would still be the only damn one! But the way in which he does water would be just gorgeous in World. I mean, imagine something like the Valahazak beam, but made out of water, and that is pretty close to what I'd be expecting. In fact, when talking about his old moves, I actually have very few full-on changes, as aside from his hitbox, his fight was actually relatively solid. One thing I would ask, though, is simply more animations for the same attacks. If Plesioth is going to do a tail spin and a hip check for half of the fight, add variations of the attack for him to use instead. Now, the tail spin will probably already be fixed, as tail spins are an archetype of attack that just functions completely differently in the New World monsters than Old World ones, but I wouldn't mind a couple extra hip check animations. Nothing too fancy or distracting, but just a way to make it look like you aren't fighting a piece of cardboard with legs and a water beam.
Knights of Columbus, that hurts!
And definitely, for stuff like his bite, he needs more animations. I mean, imagining a creature that is literally listed as having the bite strength to crush a Carapacean shell, having only 1 bite attack, and the fact that this bite attack is this little forceless, dinky, slow strike that he doesn't even do very often is sort of hilarious to me. As for an area, there isn't actually that much water in the New World, but there is no question to me that Plesioth would fit perfectly in the ancient forest, specifically in the areas that the Great Jagras likes to frequent. This pond in Area 1 would definitely be a place he would enjoy a nice chill. This sort of pond at the bottom of the big rock slope here would be a good spot for him to hang out as well. But his main area, the place he would swim around and hunt from, would quite clearly be the bottom of this beach with the Kestodon. I can straight up see him recreating his ecology video with an idle animation as he plucks a Kestodon right off the beach and into his stomach, and in fact, this area is where he would start most fights as well. One thing in the Old World is either the use of sonic bombs or fishing with frogs to get him out of the water at the start of the encounter, and I do like that idea, but it could definitely be worked on a little bit. In the New World, you could easily have this be a thing as long as you put a cap for how long he can just swim around ignoring you. The most annoying thing about fighting an Old World Plesioth to me was if you forgot a sonic bomb, you would just sort of have to stare at him until he coincidentally swam close enough to you to jump out and attack. His love of frogs actually brings me to my next change. Remember the slopey pond zone I mentioned? Well, there's actually paratoads there. So what if, in fitting with the Plesioth's undoubtedly derpy personality on the inside, he could idly, in his idle animations, try to eat a paratoad and accidentally just sort of sit there paralyzed because he set it off, completely on his own, not even requiring a hunter to see him do it. This is the type of weird interaction I can see a Plesioth doing in World that we would never see in the Old World, but also are unlikely to see another other creature do in the New World. The final changes then would be not to the combat, but to the equipment. We need to have a serious talk about this head hammer. Jesus Christ, I need it in the game. That isn't a change. Oh yeah, the change actually is the armor, not the weapons. The diver set released back in the summer event last year is very reminiscent of Plesioth armor from the old world, and while not exactly the same, in fact appearing to take inspiration from a mix of sets, it would be a little bit odd to have both the diver set and the classic Plesioth armor in the same game. The solution to this is quite simple. Give Plesioth a new armor set. Especially now that we have seen the Beatotus armor, it is so unwaveringly clear that the Piscine Wyvern armor sets have a theme, a gladiatorial theme, a badass gladiatorial theme that hasn't been done well enough yet to actually make it into my fashion sets. What I'm saying is if Plesioth comes to the New World, he could actually be given one of the best looking armor sets in the game. Think about that for a second. Alright everybody, I've been Cotton Dinosaur and this has been Plesioth. Do you want him to come to the New World? Are you as optimistic as me about his implementation? What monsters do you want to see come to the New World for Iceborne? Like if you like the video, subscribe and hit the little notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. This is the brand new outro to tell you all the things that you do that we love, so let's start with something simple and say, oh, we love your eyes. When they're watching us play video games, when we make a bunch of jokes that are kinda lame, or when they gaze upon our failures as we try to kill the monsters or report important news about the Kingdom Animalia. Rage, Cotton, and Hollow are all here, talking about the things you want to hear, so if you want to be the first to hear, like and subscribe and the bell and we'll cheer. Some of you are patrons even though we are all the noobs and you're the pros. There's nothing we can do to thank you. No, really, there's nothing we could possibly do. Goodbye.